Juste devant la caméra. Non, mais c'est pas grave, on va pas parler. On va entendre tout ce que
If you see people falling asleep, that's the sign.
Bonjour à tous, on va sûrement démarrer. Je parle pas français au cas où. La présentation.
Just to tell you
Only the speaker will speak. Donc pour information, donc vitesse continue delivery, maintenant ça va faire 1 an, 2 ans que ça existe. J'avais du mal à faire venir des gens, mais il y a des gens qui viennent par eux-mêmes, c'est cool. Autre chose, c'est que j'avais du mal, j'avais posté une annonce, finalement j'ai eu plein de gens qui sont venus vers moi, j'en ai au moins quelques-uns pour jusqu'à la fin de l'année. Mais si vous avez des idées de talk, n'hésitez pas, si vous voulez en parler, si vous voulez inviter, si une boîte veut accueillir, voilà, n'hésitez pas à proposer. Alors, comme vous voyez, on ouvre à 70, il y a 20 personnes en 60 et 20 personnes en file d'attente et on se retrouve à 30. Je ne sais pas, il faut que je trouve un truc pour ça.
Il ne faut pas faire file d'attente, c'est pareil chez tout le monde. Chez Xebia, ils avaient fermé à 100, des 30.
Ah là là, c'est horreur. Horreur et damnation. Ok, ouais, je pense qu'à un moment, il faut reprendre. Après, c'est une prise de risque. Quoi d'autre? Donc, je vais laisser Nato parler et se présenter, faire le suite de la soirée. Et comme je disais, il a 1 heure sans problème. Si au bout d'1 heure, vous en avez marre, vous le dites. Et si vous voulez continuer tout le reste de la soirée, parce qu'à 22 heures, on va arrêter quand même. Mais vous voulez continuer. It's up to him and to you. Thank you very much.
Hello, everybody. I slightly toyed with the idea of doing this session in French because I remember a tiny bit of French from when I was a kid, but then it would have been too much, so it wasn't really the case. But if I talk too fast, let me know. If you have any question, if you can't express in English, please ask someone else to ask this question about me. Otherwise, just feel free to stop whenever you have questions. I'm Matteo. Email, blog, Twitter. Feel free to pester me and send me as much questions as you want. I'll be very happy to help you. Just to set the topic. How many developers I have in the room? Brilliant. How many people are doing continuous delivery today, or continuous deployment, or even continuous integration at this stage? You can see how the hands up, so now everybody's doing continuous integration. Okay, that's fine. Cool. So, first question, what is DevOps? Can I install it? No. There is no DevOps Enterprise Edition you can install on your servers, okay? So, scrapping that, what are we talking about tonight? Today we're talking about some of these things. Not everything, of course, because it would be kind of pointless. But given that not everybody is doing all the practices at the best, I will tear the session slightly down so that we will have a bi-directional conversation. Because it will be pointless just me talking for an hour. You know, yes, everything is fine, but I'm not going to do anything about what you talked to us about. So it will be pointless. So DevOps, what is it? Basically, it's bringing an idea to your users. Okay, that's what it is. So everything starts when you plan for your idea, where you have a breakdown of the stories, where you have an analysis, where you have all sorts of processes, which help you to understand the amount of work you need to do on it. So if I want to compete with Amazon, the first thing I would do would not be creating a data center, because AWS is pretty much unattainable these days, but it would be creating an e-commerce. So this e-commerce will be a set of features, so like the payment system, like the user management system, and so on. And each of these features will have some user stories. So as a user, I might want to put some books in the cart and then do something else, check out, for example, so pay for it. All these moving pieces need to be built, tested in a collaborational way, so working together with the team, and potentially with other things in the middle, so like security scanning, open source compliance, cloud-based device testing, code quality analysis, you name it. Okay, so everything that goes around the code is here on this plate. When you have something that works, you move towards the release. And then we will be touching a very difficult topic, because that always brings up conversation. So we're moving into the continuous delivery realm. But first, we need to do continuous deployment. So we need to bring this stuff to production before enabling it to the user. And eventually, when the user starts using your stuff, your e-commerce, your application, or whatever, you need to monitor and learn. So you need to understand how the user is behaving with your application, and if the application is giving something to the users, bringing some value to the user. Okay? So everything here is this loop that goes on and on and on. First, foundations for Devops. Foundations are this one thing called pipeline that everybody is talking about for the last, 12 months, 18 months, everybody's talking about pipelines. So yeah, that's the foundation, because independently on the technology you'll be using, it doesn't matter, it's not about technology. It is a system where my code goes in, it's automatically built, tested, scanned, whatever, packaged, and those packages will be pushed to production. So that's the basics of my pipeline. I can't get that far because that's the pipeline. I'm lacking the pressure. I'm missing the pressure. I'm missing the control stages, all these sorts of things. But still, I need the tubes. So we'll be starting with continuous integration and an artifacts repository, for example. So storing everything into packages, which are going to go somewhere, instead of installing things manually, having even scripts. Scripts are good, but scripts are not an automated and reliable way of deploying stuff. It's better to have a package solution. Then, this system needs to be reliable, of course, and having this system in place means that you get quality time for your developers. So instead of spending, let's say, out of 7 hours of working day, you get 2 hours fixing problems from production. Doesn't really make sense. It's 2 hours of wasted time because stuff doesn't compile, stuff is not packaged, stuff is not tested, and so on. Having a release pipeline gives you time to spend on fixing bugs, improving your products, or even just improving the product from an architectural point of view, so reducing technical debt. As a person involved with the pipeline, I should not worry about how things are done. Once it's set up, it's there, it's done. So is the pipeline laid on? Fine. I don't need to worry about the tubes anymore, unless there is a leak. So is it continuous integration? I'm doing continuous integration, I'm pushing stuff to production, I'm doing all sorts of things. Is it not a pipeline? No, not yet. Because in order to have a pipeline, you need to have a process that goes from code, check-in, commit, that builds, tests, packages, and pushes something out. Once it's out of the door, then you need to have all the approvals, the infrastructure deployment, all these things that are not related to code. The build server should not provision servers, should not provision virtual machines, or configure firewalls, things like that. That's another thing. So the first thing I can suggest to you, once you have your basics in place, which is continuous integration server and some kind of orchestrator, it could be release management, it could be Bamboo, it could be all you want. But you need an orchestrator that brings your packages onwards towards an environment. That's the first step to enable continuous deployment. A continuous deployment to me, I'm not sure if it's the same for you, but continuous deployment to me is continuously bringing packages to production. So that's the foundation of continuous delivery. The delivery step comes next, but takes half an hour really, roughly to get to that. So once you have these basics in place, you need to know your code. Because many people start working on projects, they hire people, people goes, and at the end of the day, you might find out that 90% of your product is pretty much from Stack Overflow. So knowing your code is very, very important once you have something in production, which is actually used by paying users. So code quality analysis at build time makes sure that you're not releasing potential problems. It could be security scanning, it could be open source code scanning, it could be vulnerability scanning, all sorts of things, but just start with code quality. Because if you have a good quality in your code, you're less likely to deliver security problems and so on. So that's the foundation to me. Those are all my ideas, really. And if your code quality is bad, you're also piling up on technical debt. Are you familiar with technical debt? Okay. Technical debt, in a nutshell, is knowing that I'm bringing out stuff that will need time to fix in the future. So it's like getting a loan. It's like getting a mortgage. If I'm not actually paying all I have, the interest rate is going to hit into my capital. And so we'll have to spend even more to pay this mortgage or this loan. That's a very good example. And in the build, measure, and learn loop, the measure stage, so you build, you deploy something, you have users using it, but measure how things are going. Because if the customer asks for a lift and you're delivering a rocket, they both go up, but the rocket goes much higher than what the customer asked. So it's better to have a good understanding of how the project is going and if I'm going in the right direction. Because again, this kind of misunderstandings happen. If you don't keep up with technical debt from the beginning, then you will find that sooner or later your project is going to be clogged up with stuff to fix. Examples of technical debts are, well, it's just a 5 minutes change. What is going to take you to do it? Or I really, really need this before the end of the sprint. Or CFO, CIO, C whatever, asked for this thing. Can you please do it as soon as possible, dropping all the rest you have on your plate? Those kind of things are technical debt. And they happen every day in every company. You can't avoid that. Because even if in whatever company you go, the CEO comes in, it is kind of hard telling him, no, you need to go to the back of the queue. It is a human nature. You can't do much about that. But only metrics will tell you if you're going into the right direction. So if you spend, let's say, 10 in a unit of time or whatever, into implementing code quality analysis at the beginning or as soon as possible in your project, you will save 10 multiplied by, I don't know, 10, 12, 20 times on in stuff that you can do in the future. So you can extend your product where it matters. You can reduce maintenance costs because you can have a forecast of what could happen in the future if, let's say, if I'm vulnerable to SQL injection. What could happen in the future? Well, the company might go bankrupt because these days SQL injection is pretty much everywhere and companies are going bust at the rate of 5 minutes per company. So stuff like that is very important, especially these days. And also, you can proactively understand potential problems. That's something that will come at the end. But if you can have an eye of sight that, well, maybe in this specific condition, someone could have access to my databases. Or maybe in this specific condition, but the most important day of the year, someone can bring down my site, my service, my app, whatever. Knowing that in advance, 6 weeks in advance, might help. And also, sorry.
Excuse me, you speak about code analysis.
Yeah.
So it's great if your code is good, it's pretty good for you. I'm a business analyst, I don't develop, but who could manage the code analysis? Sometimes I have some junior developers, they're not really mature, they don't really know about how to code. Who can manage this code analysis?
That's a brilliant question.
It's a full problem for me.
That's a brilliant question. And you should not do this on your own, but you should have a tool that helps you doing that. So for example, in a minute, I will show you what we actually use internally And it is an open source tool, like many others we use every day. And it really helped us, because you can start with this tool called SoraQ, we'll see that in a moment, with the default set of rules that are pretty much the daily standard for everybody. And then you can customize it. So when your developers are going to put new code for a build, you'll get a report of that build, of that release. So you will know the quality of the stuff you're releasing in a very nice dashboard with all nice graphs. And you can even go into the code if you need. Of course, you as a business analyst, you might not need it, but you can point out to an architect, to a senior developer, to someone else, that having a security bug in your code might not be a good idea. So we will see that in a moment, because I think it's 23 slides plus thanks, questions, and all the other things. So it will be roughly 15, 17 slides, and then it's all demos. So it's just to set up the ideas. But brilliant question. So I said, half of the room roughly is developers. There is a business analyst. Is there any IT pro, any system administrator? Okay. How many time do you waste? How many hours, days you waste deploying stuff and starting with OS or virtual machine size or these sorts of things, or firewall, user accounts, configurations, all these things? Do you spend much time on it?
Not now, but before, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you start using infrastructure as code by any chance? Okay,
Yes.
yeah, that's the reason why.
Yeah.
So, for who's not the system administrator, infrastructure as code means bringing infrastructure out of the equation and out of people telling you that you need to wait a week so that you can get your virtual machine up and running. Sorry. But basically means that you can define your infrastructure exactly like code. You can test it if you're on premise, or you can have validation if you're in the cloud. And then once you define this infrastructure, you don't need to ask them to deploy it for you, but you can have an orchestrator doing it for you. So it's automated, and it's always going to work. There is no manual interaction in between. It's not just for the cloud, as many could think, because on-premise, you have PowerShell, Chef, Puppet, Ansible, you have all sorts of things you can use. In PowerShell DSE, if you're familiar with PowerShell, the idea is each function would be something to install, and then you have a list of pieces to install here. So for example, if you need to install IAS in a Windows machine, you will install the web server feature, and then you can enter all the configuration into that feature. And that's it. You write it once, and you run it all the time you need. If you're in the cloud, that's much easier, because of course, Azure and Amazon CloudFormations makes it much easier. But of course, it's the cloud, so it's supposed to be easier because vendors will like you to use it, and because cloud, it's supposed to be easier, taking the hassle of infrastructure and this kind of things out of the equation. So that makes sense. But infrastructure as code is not just for the cloud. That's very important, because even if I'm going to show you how to do it in the cloud, I'll also open up Google and show you how easy it is to do it on-prem. So, and eventually, that's a question often comes up when it comes to infrastructure as code. Oh yeah, well, we have system administrators for deploying things. We have sysadmins for installing Windows and Linux and installing SQL Server or Oracle or whatever. Why should I do that? Well, first, because everybody works together. So system administrators, developers, architects, testers, business analysts, marketing, everybody should work together. Starting from this assumption up, it will also mean that automation means that if I have a naming convention, for example, where all the machines should start with FR, because we're in France, so should start with FR, and someone might accidentally push instead of the letter R, D or E, something close, then it means that this person needs to at least rename the machine, if not to wipe it completely. So that is wasted time, and it's wasting money for the company. Automations means that nobody's going to touch that machine because the configuration is written somewhere in a piece of executable, let's call it this way, which is treated like code. A piece of a script that is treated like code. So it is much easier for anybody to provision some infrastructure. And also, given that everything is handled as source control or as source code, everything is version. So I have all the steps in between two versions because everything is into Git or Team Foundation server or Subversion or whatever. You can test your stuff before pushing it out. And also it is documented because reading a piece of Powershell DSC or some JSON with an outline is much easier than going through 20 pages configuration manual. Can tell you for sure. This is the last slide before starting doing things for real. Building is not releasing because build and release, even if they can often do the same things, they're not the same thing, and they should be kept separate. Starting a release process from a broken build, for example, is a waste of resources. Let's say that you have a build that provisions, for example, because it's made in the wrong way, it provisions infrastructure, you start configuring things, and it builds your code and installs your code. If the infrastructure provision takes 20 minutes, and then you get a red build in 6 minutes, what's the point of? There's no point. But often people start mixing together build and release, and that's kind of wrong. So you should always keep them separate. Also because the release should have all the approval steps. The release is where you get the approvals, not the build. So the release should always start when all your artifacts are built already. Infrastructure is provisioned then, and you deploy the artifacts and you can start integration testing, UAT, whatever. This is also where you have the approval flow. So if something goes wrong in the build, it's just for the dev, because of course the dev pushed some code to the trunk, built it, and then you see that it's red because not all the testers are passing, or because you have some code to code the problem. If you have a problem at release, it's different and involves the whole team. So that's a different realm altogether. So let's have a look at these prerequisites, even if they're not. And we are pretty much halfway through the slides, so you will be happy to hear that there are just, I'd say, 10 slides left. So, build. Step number 0, I would say. This is a typical default build for VSTS. I'm using VSTS and Microsoft technologies, but all of these things can be applied to GitHub and TeamCity, or to SVN and Jenkins, or whatever other combination of source control and build engine. Okay, because all of these concepts are actually generalized. There is just a couple of things that are technology specific, like Azure Resource Manager for infrastructure provisioning and something at the end with artificial intelligence, but that's pretty much it. And someone is trying to build it from the UK, which is very bad. So this is what the build looks like. I get my sources, fair enough. I run Nugget restore. If you're not familiar with Nugget, how many .NET developers in the room? Nobody uses .NET. Okay, so package management restore. That's fine.
Really interested about what you're speaking about.
Sorry?
Really interested about it, but we do not know.
That's fine, perfect. But NPM, familiar with it? JavaScript? Okay, that's the same as an NPM restore. It's a package manager. So you get all the public and private potential packages, and you restore them. Then you have a SORA kubeanalysis starting here, which means that this step creates a project or updates a project in my SORA Cube server, which you will see in a moment, and it just does the activity to pick up the code for the package, so the path for the code. So then the actual build, which it is fairly standard. Okay, there is only one change, which is given that it is a web application, package everything as a single file. We will see what it means in a moment, but just package everything as a single piece of artifact, in this case a zip file, which is then going to be used. Complete the SORA kubeanalysis. You don't need to do anything here. Publish the symbols if you have them, which are useful for debug, and then publish inside VSTS your artifacts. This could be a file share, this could be anywhere else, but it means that this stage, this task here, sorry, publishes my infrastructure definition in a folder called ARM templates, ARM, sorry. And another one that packages my zip file containing my web application into another folder called web packages. So this is fairly simple, fairly standard. And there isn't much more you really need these days. You might add some unit tests, fair enough. You might add some other kind of tests. You might add some activities done on the server, but that's more. Okay, so that's the basics that we really need.
Sorry, what's the difference between the two publication steps?
This one?
Between publication and packages?
Oh, there is nothing in between. It's just one step and then another step, and they just put stuff somewhere. Okay, they just literally copy from this folder all the zip files inside the folder called web packages, which is stored on the server. So yeah, it's copy and paste. Let's put it this way: copy and paste something. So what I will do is to trigger this build, and given that it's using my lab in the UK, it could be slow, it could be anything. So let's just wait for it. Let's have a look at the code. So no .NET developers, Java developers. Okay, anything else developers? What? Okay, so web app. Is this? Okay, very much. Yeah, okay, so it's not going to be, well, very deep into the code, but let's say that we're talking about microservices here. Let's pretend, because it's such a simple application, it didn't make sense to make real scalable microservices. But let's more of a layered application, but in a microservice way. So what's happening is that I'm going to have these two projects, and then I have this infrastructure definition. So let's have a look at the infrastructure definition first. That's how the infrastructure is defined. And you might not get anything out of it, of course, because this is JSON. JSON is not supposed to be read by a human being. But what's really nice is that if you use the outline here, left hand side, you'll have a way of reading it. Can you read it from the bottom? Or shall I zoom it a little bit? Yeah, okay. That would be so. Right, so 50%, pretty too much. 125. Is it any better? That's good. Okay. This JSON file here is a 300-something lines of code file, which I didn't write, because what I did was starting with an empty project. And if you need to add resources, you can do it this way, or let's see if the wizard helps me. No, you can do it this way, or you can go onto the Azure GitHub Quick Start repository, and you can open up one of theirs, because whenever you open this kind of file, which will be the same for Amazon CloudFormation, I assume, whenever you open this file, you have this situation. So you can copy and paste whatever you want. But what's important here is that I have some resources. So I have a SQL Server database. The Oracle, the anything, it runs in the cloud, so it's SQL Server and SQL Azure, actually. This SQL Server has a database and some firewall rules. Usually stuff that developers don't really bother about. Just give everything admin and bring down the firewall, usually, isn't it? Then I have an hosting plan name, which, let's say, is the virtual machine. And then I have a variable called API site name, which is a combination. It's a string concatenation. And then I have another website, which, well, this is an old version. I will download the other one in a minute. But site name. So it is a variable on there. Sorry, a parameter. Then I'm going to define all of a set of files. Sorry, not files. Of parameters. So these are all parameters. Okay. SQL Server name, SQL Server location is running in Azure, so I need the location. West Europe, North Europe. It will be the same parameter again. Login, password. It could be beware, password, secure string. There is nothing in clear text. all sorts of things, SQL collation, you name it, okay? This thing goes on my version control system, GitHub, and nobody else is going to touch it ever, because then my build server is going to run it, or my release manager is going to run it. So I don't care, and I don't need to care. That's important, because once this is validated by the IT team together with the developers and so on, it is fine. I don't need to worry. The only thing I can worry about is, for example, how much memory I assign to my SQL server, to my Oracle server. But I can change it in a moment, because let's pretend that addition here, it's basic, but let's pretend that instead of basic, there was an integer, there was a number here, and it was gigabytes of RAM, gigabytes of memory. So instead of having then my parameters file, because I have a parameters file as well, instead of having, let's say, 8, I might skip it up to 32 and rerun the release. The release is going to deploy new stuff, and it's going to provision a new database. So it is much better, because if a developer needs more memory, if we have the hardware for it, then it just needs to increase. The developer just needs to increase the value of it. Right. Yeah, it seems to be stuck on his toe. Where I said it. Where is this going?
Is there some bad contact with the start?
Oh, maybe it's coming back.
I try to find it.
I think it's slightly bent.
No.
Anyway, if I so okay, thank you. Anyway, I will continue with our slide. Instead of having him saying, okay, you need to install Windows, we need to install Linux, we need to install Oracle, we need to buy a new machine with we'll buy a new machine, no, but we need to re-provision a new machine with a certain amount of memory disk and stuff. It takes so much time. It's not worth it. So what really is important here is that you can do everything with the code. For example, if I want to do this on premise, because how many of you is in the cloud? Amazon or Azure? Okay, so less than half. Just moving this on. If you're familiar with Windows, but it's the same with Linux, because PowerShell DSC runs on Linux as well. Okay, so don't worry about that. In example of Windows, if I need to install IIS, so the web server, which is a part of Windows, I will have something like this. Windows features is not thick enough. But called IIS, because I want to call it IIS, okay? Open brackets. Name is this, application pool, and so on. So all my properties for the whole server will be defined like this. Now I'll close the bracket, I'll close the brackets, and I will have at the end a line that says execute this stuff, which is not just a single feature, but I can have multiple features. Something like I don't remember the. Let's pretend that it's right. So I will have some stuff inside my script, and then I will have a line saying, execute my code, my script. It's not just executing it, because PowerShell DSC, like Ansible, like Chef, like any other infrastructure as code provider, is idempotent. So if you run it once, you will get a result. If you run it 100 times, even if you get an error, you will always get the same result or an error. So if it succeeds, it succeeded. If it fails, it's not going to leave you in a broken state. Okay? So it is important for infrastructure provision, because if I'm putting, let's say that I'm putting 32 for the memory, and the server only has 16 gigs of RAM, and that means that I'm going over the amount of RAM I can provision, I will get an error. If I get back to 16 or 10 or whatever, then it's going to work, always. And that's very important. So this is the same technology that you get in the cloud with those JSON files. But of course, it means that you need to write it all yourself. I also have a VGA. I also have a VGA laptop. Yeah.
It's fine. It's back.
It's fine.
It's in.
It's done.
Okay.
Fingers crossed. We don't need this anymore.
Right.
Sorry.
No problem.
Cool. So in the meantime, what's the result of my build? Succeeded, 2.5 minutes. Green build, all right? So, what happened here? I got some artifacts, ARM and web packages. This is my infrastructure. This is the content of my website, which it means that for ARM, I will have all my definitions. I'm just going to use one, but I'm lazy, so I just said put everything that is JSON into the folder. Don't bother with the search. And then for the packages, to the API.zip, to the web.zip. Those are my two microservices. Those are my two layers, which can be independently released. And there is no release here yet. Also, and it's very important for you, you see, I have a SoraQ quality analysis which failed. In this case, I did not set the build to fail when the SoraQ analysis fails, but I can do that. So even if you have a good build, but the code quality fails, the build fails. It doesn't go on. And this is the report. Because again, you shouldn't do this on your own. So you need some help, and that's the help you can get.
What is tested by the solution?
Sorry?
What does it test?
It has a set of rules. There are standard rules. So you start with a default set of rules, and then you can decide to add more or remove some. You can do whatever you want. You can also write your own. So basically, this thing runs on the build and tests your code against rules like this. Well, let's open the bugs, for example, because it's good to see what's the problem. So for example, here, please define the locale to be used in this string operation for this file. Where is that? So here, for example, it's to upper. But I could define a specific locale to define to upper, because I could have all sorts of strings going in there in all sorts of alphabets and all sorts of different languages. And then, if I don't know what I'm talking about, because I might be a business analyst like you, so I'm not supposed to know all these sorts of things, we'll get an explanation that says, look, this stuff like string dot, to lower, to upper, index of, last index of, and compare are all culture dependent. So it could be a problem if you're passing Cyrillic in there, for example. So maybe it's good to sort it out. And that's not a big problem. So you see, it is defined as a 5 minutes effort to fix. This 5 minutes effort actually is calculated as a 30 minutes per line of code for a full line of code to replace. That's a setting in SoraQ. So it's not like the 5 minutes change. But we're getting there. Other things could be this. Vulnerability. There is a login statement in here in JavaScript. Okay, so it's using console.log to log something. There could be vulnerability because with a console you could expose potentially sensible data for your infrastructure, for your application, not necessarily for the user. And you get the explanation. So this is a very good tool to understand where the problems are as a team. Because if just the development teams hold the key to this thing, it is useless. Because if the team doesn't want to write good code, it will never do that. But if the team is collaboratively working with someone else, then you're going to get good things. And this is very good because it is automated. You don't need to worry about doing anything. You can start with the default rules. For example, those are the rules. Or that's another thing. That's a good one. Suspicious for multi-threading, which basically says in this line here, you should configure a way to false in order to allow execution to continue in any thread. Because, well, it could happen that you get race conditions in multi-threading, and if you don't handle this, you're stuck. So unless the garbage collector goes through or anything else is automated by someone else, if you're on your own and you don't handle this is an asynchronous await, so you need to do that. And this helps because, see, you have where it happened, you have who did things, so you can go to the person and say, well, why did you use this trace information? It's handy. It's not for blaming, but it's just handy. And then you have the opportunity of understanding why things are happening because you have a good explanation with that. So that's good for the whole of a team. Juniors, seniors, non-technical people, it is good. Were you asking a question?
I want to check and see. Potentially some rules like no console.log in the code could be tested before committing.
Yes.
With a hook.
Yep.
And
also there is a command line scanner which you can run on your own and without supported projects as well, as I discovered. And also some IDEs, like here, for example, Visual Studio has an on-the-fly build and code analysis result hooked up to SoraQ. So no reinventing the wheel for Microsoft. Here, this is all standard tooling. It's very good, to be fair. I really find it very valuable.
You can use it to check if your build failed because of the code smell reported by the SoraQ server. You can fix it to an idea, check that the fix, the warning disappears, but it does not create another warning. Sometimes when you fix, you can create another.
Yep, but here you have a high-level overview of what is going on, because you can also have, for example, if you have different rules for different branches. So let's say if you have different rules for master and develop, or for main and develop, whatever you call them, you can have different rules, and that makes sense. But this is a good way of saying, okay, there's a problem here in this code. Is it acceptable enough? Can I go ahead, or shall I fix it now? That really helps.
Can that kind of tool replace
I wouldn't say so, because code review by peers, especially by peers, is a good way of interacting with someone else. And the value you get out of the interaction is very high. So removing it, unless you're fully virtual, then maybe yes, but I would not replace paired code reviews, to be fair. But it's a very good tool to firstly get the grip with the quality of the code, and then even say, going to David someone and say, why did you use this? Because I see that it could be a problem. Maybe there is a reason, we can add an exception, or I just told my colleague that he did something that could be fixed. And usually it is much easier if you go to the person who coded it, because maybe he had a specific reason for doing that. And if you discover it 6 months later, this person might have forgotten. So it is a good thing. What I really like, to be fair with you,
can you insert code review and continuous implement?
Yeah, we can do that.
When
Pull request usually. Yeah, pull requests are the best bet, because otherwise you need to create kind of a new ceremony like sprint standouts and stuff like that. Instead, if you go at pull request time, and you, for example, you can say exclude myself as a reviewer. So the person who sends out the PR cannot review the PR itself. This way, you're forcing a peer code review, and that's the best way of doing it. in my opinion, because it is asynchronous. So you can check in, you can comment, you create your PR, you can stay there for, let's say, 2 hours, then I pick it up, I said that you did something wrong, I can go at your desk and tell you, look, there is this problem, it would be better if you can do this, or if you can find something else, stuff like that. PRs are, in my opinion, made for this kind of collaboration, so there is no need really for another ceremony. We already have so many between stand-ups, retrospectives, planning, so it's not really needed. Any question about that? Because that usually attracts lots of questions, and I can see that now. Stuff like calculation here. This comes as a 30 minutes per full line of code to reanalysis, test, build, and so on. Also, you have all the history. So in the administration, for example, you will have activity here. Sorry, in the activity, you will have the history of your scans. So all of that will have a history here. If you release a milestone or anything, you can create a custom event saying, okay, today we released version 1 RTM, and that's the baseline we set for it. And of course, quality rules and quality profiles can be custom. So you can add, you see, for example, in the default profile for C# I'm using 101 active rules, sorry, and 119 inactive rules. So that's the standard one. It can be stricter, user wish, but examples of rules are this. There are so many. So you can really go deep into that. And there are also some security rules, which are very handy these days. It doesn't replace a security scanning tool, because this happens at build time. So you don't have binaries at rest or binaries at runtime, which can expose other kind of vulnerabilities, but this is just for the code, for the core. Then we built, we packaged. What you didn't see is that we also released. Because while I was talking, and given that I talk a lot, as I said before, I also ran a release, as you can see, 18 minutes ago. 18 minutes ago. This release did nothing else than provisioning my infrastructure, and then pushing out the binaries, the packages. So everything else was done, was handled. Creating the database, creating the firewall rules, installing Windows potentially. In this case, not, because I'm using Azure, so there is no Windows installation, but still, everything that was infrastructure was done. And then it just deployed my layers. So, let's see if I recall. Yeah, that should be it. It works. And this was deployed 18 minutes ago. I literally didn't do anything. Because I'm not supposed to. I'm supposed to write, if I'm a developer, I'm supposed to write code, write tests, spend time on the system to improve it, not to mess around with a broken build. Because builds are supposed to help, not supposed to create further problems. Otherwise, we would be still building locally and shipping manually created zips all across. That wouldn't make sense, wouldn't it?
Sorry? Mario, you said that the deployment is idempotent.
Yes.
How do you achieve this? Is it by the script, the way you build it?
Brilliant question. So with on-premise, PowerShell, DSC, Chef, Ansible, it's built into the product. So let me show you that. This is it. So that's fine. What's important? Yeah, you'll see it. This is a configuration, okay? For a node, so for my server, I have some settings and I have something. What happens then? What is it? Is it a full one? Let me find an example. Yeah, you see, this is an example like I did before. So to install an AES website, I will have for server 1 and server 2, install AES, install ASP with some stuff. Okay, that's my script. So at the, I can't believe that. Well, anyway, at the end, on premise, there is a line to add, which is like start DSC or execute DSC. I didn't want to write it on my own because I don't really remember the syntax, so I didn't want to pop up all sorts of errors. But yeah, that's a DSC, blah, blah. That's it. Start DSC configuration. My path, so the path of my script, and some switches you might need. When you start DSC with PowerShell, for example, on premise, everything that goes through that must be in that specific form. So with the features like that, with the features like I wrote it down, and then it will be idempotent. So whatever you put towards it, then it just works or not. If it doesn't work, you get an error, and that's it. Yeah, these kind of things. At the end, you will get the result, which is it could be an error. It could be even a silent error stating provisioning succeeded, but there was something else. Because you can test this stuff. You can pretend to be a PowerShell DSC server, and so you can execute tests against it. Sorry, but not remembering the syntax means that I could easily go down the downhill route of writing bad things, then seeing the red line below and trying to fix it. So it wouldn't really help. But that's pretty much the flow. What you do is writing infrastructure as code and testing as code. All of that, while I was talking a lot, as I said. So, no, not again. That should be right. Did it before it's coming. So, those were the basics. We were able to bring an application which is running with a SQL Server database and with some microservices of sorts to the cloud. All very fancy, all very cool. It could be the same premise again, but then I want to do more. So usually, what I really, really like as a concept is silent deployments. So the question, the thing I was telling you before at the beginning about continuous delivery, continuous integration, I think, and many others do, a continuous delivery is about bringing tangible value to the end user. As a user, I'm able to see a new feature, use it, and provide feedback professionally. Continuous deployment is a technological step to bring production code, code to production. So stuff that becomes quickly production code. But continuous delivery is not continuous deployment, and vice versa. Okay. So if you don't agree, please say now we can start the debate. Otherwise, I will go ahead with the assumption that you agree with it.
So, continuous delivery is to put in production.
Continuous delivery is about bringing something new to the user. So if you as a user start using Amazon, and you see that there is a new category on Amazon, that's continuous delivery to me. You as a user might not see what happened behind 3 weeks of deployments. That's continuous deployment, to me at least. You disagree with that, don't you? Yeah, that's fine. That's a bit of a fine line.
Okay. Why not?
No.
My idea is I'm more tricked by the use of the word by different people, and for me, continuous delivery is more the idea to create a package as fast as possible, and continuous deployment was to deploy this package on production as fast as possible. So people doing continuous deployment are more people directly as fast as possible taking what has been coded by the developer to the production. Maybe in 1 hour or I don't know, 10 seconds is very fast, and maybe deploy to production 100 times by day. The idea is continuous delivery. It's a capacity to do it, not to do it directly.
Okay.
It just seems to switch
Yeah,
the statement.
yeah. This is a discussion. Oh, sorry.
Maybe if we look at the term, at the vocabulary, it seems you are more right as a common use case. Because delivery is to put something to someone, it's to bring something to someone.
That's a discussion I had for the last, let's say for the last couple of months, and that became quite heated up. That's because I read the Jenkins books, the Phoenix Project first, and then Devops Handbook. And this becomes quite clear after a while that there is a difference between actually delivering stuff to the user and deploying, so just bringing stuff at the point where the user starts using it, but without flipping the switch on. That comes later with feature toggles. That ties in with feature toggles, in my opinion. But it is a subtle difference that can make the difference.
Okay, if you add feature toggle to the mix, it's maybe even changing the discussion, because yes, you can totally continuously deliver something, but not deploy it.
Not activate.
Vice versa to me. So I can continuously deploy to my production service, but nobody will see that until I flip the switch on. To me, that's how it works.
Okay.
I know. It's good to see that the same questions trigger different answers all the time, but at the end of the day, we can get to a middle ground. That's something I'm seeing around.
It's more an historical what the other people are using the word already. If you look to video on YouTube or in InfoQ, there was continuous delivery, and continuous deployment was more to deliver to the production.
That's more of a, let's say, the Fowler's version from continuous deployment, the 2003 books. I agree with that.
Totally. If you add a feature toggle to the mix, you can switch the statement.
Okay. So basically, you're telling me that if I have feature flags, feature toggles in the mix, then it's fine. So that's a good valuation, because we'll see that at the end. But let's talk about silent deployments now, which is continuous deployment.
Is it the same difference between minimum valuable product and minimum marketing product?
No, because MVP, minimum viable product, is just the size of product that I'm building. Minimum marketable product, it is something that can be actually marketed. If I run the e-commerce website as a minimum viable product, I can tell you we have a portion of e-commerce just for books, for example. And we don't have all sorts of things with the delivery tracking and etc. But I have the possibility of selling you books, just books. A minimum marketable product would be, I can sell you books. You can track them. You can buy them. You can return them. But it's just books. So there's a difference, because in a minimum viable product situation, I have something that works by just in one scenario, which is buying books. I can't get tracking. I can't get returns. I can't return an item if it's faulty or anything. So to me, it is different. It's a lot of these things where you have many definitions and no labels, like Devops itself. Many definitions and no labels. So that's, to me at least, the thing. Here is a similar thing, but more at the user level. So it is either I can easily see things delivered, so people flicks the switch on and I can see things. Otherwise, I can't see people deploying stuff on production servers. So that's the difference. It is a bit more marked, if you want, as a difference. Cool. So, given that it's already 35 past, so this thing is about delivering stuff with a better quality. So instead of deploying a single feature in a big chunk of release, I will slowly do smaller releases, smaller deployments, in order to get a better release. Because what I'm going to do is basically breaking down what could be a PBI into a release, well, sorry, a deploy per task. That's what I would do. So I can focus more on the quality of the code instead of finishing up the feature. And that will be continuous deployment to the limit, because I will be continuously deploying stuff like Netflix, Facebook, and the like. Okay. The idea is, as soon as we have something that fits the definition of done, it's done. So it goes to prod, no matter how small it is. There are lots of pros and a few cons, and basically it's just about overhead and keeping track of what's in flight, what's not completed. Because otherwise, it is a technical death mess. So you need to keep track of it. But otherwise, it makes life much simpler for other things. Deployment becomes liquid. A real example. TFS, Team Foundation Server. If you haven't heard of it, is the on-premise version of ESTS. It's the Microsoft solution for Devops. It's basically a set of databases in front of an IAS. Let's put it simple. It's a web server with some databases on the back end. Between two versions of TFS, there was a massive change which allowed rename of an artifact called Team Project, which is basically a container for the whole of the project, which for 10 years wasn't allowed. So this massive change was very well welcomed by everybody. But there was a side effect. There were large instances like mine, which is a 2.2 terabyte instance, require days of downtime. And I can't get days of downtime for something that is used as a service all over the world inside the company by hundreds or thousands of users. So Microsoft, knowing that, given that for TFS 2013 there were 5 updates, for update packs, service packs, call it as you wish. From update 4 onwards, they released a tool that enabled an online, so synchronized pre-migration of these tables, because in this database there were a few tables that were changed, and then you had data migrated. So the upgrade could have been done in a weekend. So instead of having a large offline upgrade for these tables, I will have an online upgrade, which means side-by-side tables. Okay? Massive pro. Instead of 9 days, it took less than 24 hours. Brilliant. And also massive con. The time space is required for the tool to run, because this table was huge, and the transaction log file underneath was even bigger. So I needed a lot of space for it. So that's a con in this case. That's technical debt, because if I couldn't upgrade the server in a weekend, I would have had a growth of disk space, which would have been unmanageable in a few days. This way, I did it in a weekend fairly easily for the upgrade problem. So fair enough. That's the idea about silent deployments. My users using TFS 2013 update 4 didn't know that there was a silent tool migrating their test data from a table to another one. They didn't need to know. All they needed to know is that on Monday morning everything was up on version 2015. So, demo. Oh, come on. Okay. One of the simplest and hardest at the same time changes you can have in your production system, adding a column to a database. That's one of the most painful things you can do, unfortunately, for some reason. So I came up with this example. This is my application. It is AngularJS for the front end, SQL Server, SQL Azure on the back end, fairly standard. This is what my API returns. JSON file. That's basically my database. Okay. Also, let me get the actual updated version. I can clone a new copy of it again and stuff like that, because this is an older version which I didn't update on my wasn't used for another conference. I'm not sure it is aligned yet still, so I'm gonna get simple hours. Okay. So the first thing I will do here. The first thing I need to do is to start changing the schema and the model. There are 4 changes here, basically, to add a column. Schema, model, logic, UI. That's the basic one. So this is my, just to give you an idea, this is how my table is made. Okay. ID, text, complete, create date, update date, delete it. That's it. Okay. It's very straightforward. So I will start by adding my new column, which is integer part. The integer is number, sorry. It can be nullable because it's handy for me. And also we'll change the model so that we're already aligned with it. This will trigger, this is continuous deployment, right? So this will trigger continuous integration build and a new release. Through. Good. Okay. So in the meantime that we talk, what's important here is that I have 2 sets of users, usually. Normal users, people clicking on Amazon, typing what they want, adding stuff to cart, checking out, things like that. And power users, people that use the APIs. Those are the 2 types of users an application user has. So what I really need to worry about is the normal user, because power users are usually a fraction of the total user base. So here, my power user potentially could see that there is a change coming, because in a few moments, you will see that I will have something here that says uref equals to none. But I'm not worried about that, because my user will not see anything. My idea at the end of the day would be to add the ID, for example, or the uref. Okay, the uref at the end. That's something that is going to bring a value change to the user. Because the user will see something different, the user can action something. Let's see what stage to do that. Oh, it's already releasing. Very good. Yeah, it's supposed to be quite quick, but sometimes, for some reason, given that every time you deploy infrastructure on the cloud, for security reasons, everything is wiped out and reinstalled, basically. So it takes a few minutes for the release itself to be proper. But in this case, it should be quicker because this is incremental on my stuff, so it doesn't completely wipe out your subscription and recreate the resources. So you see, what it's doing is picking up the artifacts. And the artifacts, as we mentioned, is ARM and web packages. So what I created before. Okay? And then it's going to deploy stuff here. So hopefully it's going to be good. So meanwhile, what we're talking about here, how to avoid problems or how to create new business value for the company. A/B testing is one. Instead of having just one website and pushing all the users to a single place, you might have 2 different versions of the same website. If you want to see which change you're bringing in is more valuable for the user. So if I have different drop-downs, different UI elements, different stuff, it could be good having a 50% user base going to version A, which is the standard version, and the other 50% to version B. This is achieved with slots. So you have a set of slots for the same web application. This is one of the things you can use in order to quickly validate if your changes are going to be good for the user. Maybe not 50-50, but 10-90, 5-95, depending on the traffic. So this is my web application, which should be all right. It is. This is my API. You should see in a moment as soon as it loads. Okay. Yes, it did. So, UF. No. Here. Is the user seeing anything about this? No, because it's not important to the actual end user. This could be done at the end of a sprint, or better, as soon as the actual coding and testing is done. Instead of waiting for the end of a sprint, like in pure Scrum, you can move to a leaner model, so more lean inclined, and continuously bringing out what you actually built. So that's a better way of achieving this continuous deployment thing. Next step is the logic. And of course, we will start with new things, because the most expensive part here will be data migration. So let's start with new things. In the controller, I will have, it's already done, actually, to be fair with you. I just, yeah, just need to do this. I'm going to create the value just by seeing what's the higher value I get from the count, and then add 1. So it is very dirty, but it works for them. It's just an idea of what could happen. Going to push, again, same stuff. So what will happen here is that no end user will see any change. My power users, remember, a very low percentage of people, will see some change. And they could do something, but they're such a low percentage that they can't do much with it. Also, this will apply only for new data. So again, they have no real use for it. So here, just to build it. Are we going a bit too long? Just one minute. Are we going a bit too long?
Maybe we have, I think 30 minutes. It's fine.
Okay.
Because it is okay.
Okay, that's fine.
I think there is already the pizza.
Okay. Okay. Oh, we'll stop then. Sorry.
No.
We can stop there and finish up afterwards.
It's up to people.
As you wish.
How many time do you need?
I can skip. I can finish in 10 minutes if you want. Okay.
Yeah, let's finish.
That's fine. That's fine. So very quickly then. Yeah, it just went very long this time around. Let's do progress. Well, I will close it up very quickly. So then what will happen next after we deploy this thing? I will start actually building the next step. So my users will only see for new data case value. The actual next step is the migration, which is where I'm going to block on your sheet. I'm going to set it on. So that's the migration. Now, that's the most expensive part, because you are bringing existing values, existing data to the new schema. But I mean, this is something that could be done with a script. It could be done in so many ways. And eventually, what I would be pushing as a final change is what actually the user will see. So here, yes, it is. Okay, item not text. Oh, thank you. Item dot ref. This is the actual final one I will do. Let me just finish. Yeah, this is 32. So you will see here that it is 51. And if I have lucky. uref is, yeah, it's 6. There it is. The entire. This is what the power user will see. There is some value with null, some values with just so after migrating data, yes, so it should be in flight. Later. In progress. I will squeeze it in. No, it's not that. How do you handle this? All this in-flight things, and how to avoid that people are going to see things with feature toggles? Because, well, let's keep the slides. You might want more control out of it. Feature toggle, you familiar with it? Brilliant. With feature toggles, you know that you can hide pieces of your applications in different places. So this is a very simple web application I created. Calculator, sum and subtract. It is kind of hard dealing with so many feature toggles. So the solution I like is launch target. This thing takes the problem out of the equation again, because what it does is feature toggle as a service. So if I'm going to disable a feature, sum, it's now disabled. I'm on the sum web page. Not just right anymore. And if I go to the home page, sum is gone. That's how feature toggles work. And that's why they're so important for continuous delivery. And also, and it's fairly easy to introduce them into your code, because let me push these out. Next. Okay, that should be here. And here should have been here. Yes, 33. So in the other application, everything is as before, and now my API is going to return the new urefs. It's not refreshed.
Let's waiting.
That's it. Yes. 3, 1, and so on. So I'm pushing out the UI change. And I'll be finished about. So it is easy, because if you go into your code, you only need to check for the feature flag problem. So you don't have to write a new system on your own that is going to automatically validate your feature toggle, because there can be many feature toggles. Okay, if you start with a simple application, you can have 2, 3, 10 feature toggles, no more than that. But if you start going deep into your app, you'll see that you have so many toggles that you could have, and it is quite easy to make it hard. So this service is something that I like, in fact, because it makes life easier, and that's where you get the most value out of it. It's not here, it's in the shared tools. Yeah. So I will have an SDK key, of course, and literally, if in this case I'm using the view band because I'm not a web developer, so I just put out something together that works. If the toggle is true, then show it. If not, don't. This is actually validated against their server. So at the end of the day, then we'll call the launch target server and say, is the toggle validated or not? Because this toggle here, this sum toggle and subtract toggle, is populated by launch target, which is brilliant. I have it somewhere. I don't remember where it's not in Visual Studio, so it's not in Rise.
Do you have an index page or something like this? Ouais, ça dit.
Let me search. Yeah, let me search. Let's see. So I was put in. Right. Oh, it's making sure. Yeah. You see, I'm getting the toggle values from the client. The client is a launch target client with an SDK key. So I can't fake that. Well, I could, but the effort would be so much for just a feature toggle that it would really work. Okay. So that's how it works. I could have my own system, but I need to build it. I can have my own libraries, but I need to implement them. This is just one thing. And this is my app, the one I pushed before. And now my users, now that everything is done, the URFs are updated, migrated, etc., for free, they should see, yes, the new UI. And that's the value for the user, something they can see and use. Now, there should be one more thing, and I only have 3 minutes for it. Well, I'll do my best for it, because telemetry, anybody's using it? Telemetry. Are you using any proactive telemetry? It means that you have machine learning behind the scenes with an artificial intelligence churning it through your logs and telling you, look, you might have a problem in the future. So that's where reactive telemetry is the starting point for most people. What happened in the past, where the past could be a millisecond before, that's the past still. We might want to know what happens in the future. And that's where I found a very nice tool called Application Insights Analytics, which doesn't require to use application insights. You can use, for example, Logstash, which has a very nice plugin for exporting to application insights. And there is a nice demo environment, which I strongly suggest. Is Microsoft testing basically MSN.com and other web pages with this thing? And this is something I really like. Application failures without clusters. Look, this is your usual chart on an average day, but you see that you have some spikes. Sorry, instead of time. But you see that you have some spikes here and there. Those are not because I'm doing some kind of tour or some kind of wizard guided thing. It's just the normal way smart diagnostics pop up. Yes, okay, let's have a look at this, because here I have 179 exceptions, which is not very good, and it's a spike. So let's have a look. It churns through the data, and it realizes that there is an IP address from St. Petersburg that continuously gets this error on, it's an out-of-memory exception, by the way, which is suspicious to say the least, on the service tickets create method. It's a REST code. This will be the pattern without this IP calling my service. This is proactive. This is machine learning. It learns from your data. It tells you, look, in the past 6 months, nothing happened. In the last 2 weeks, we started seeing those patterns. There's something wrong here. Take a look. This is what potential could be. That's very, very powerful. And this completes, you remember the loop? We saw at the beginning. It is my laptop. When I switch to
I
PowerPoint.
switch the resolution each time the
Okay.
projector.
It's a loop. You can monitor what your users do and learn from them. If that thing is legit, ramp up on your resources because you're so popular in St. Petersburg. But this could be for an e-commerce again. It could be Thanksgiving Day. It could be Chinese New Year, stuff like that. Christmas, where you get spikes. You need to understand if those spikes are legit or not. That's very powerful to me. So thank you very much for the patience. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you got something out of it. If you have any question out there with a pizza, I think it's the best one. Otherwise, feel free to send me an email or anything. And thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Non, mais c'est bon, c'est Devops, non? Ça va pas les années prochaines, vraiment? C'est que l'avait fait.
Question. Do we use some code in the hooks on GitLab?
Yeah.
One pre-commit hooks.
Basically, well, so I think every build server should have the possibility of failing the build if the sort of analysis is not succeeding.
Yeah.
So at least DSTS and TFS do. I only have a checkbox saying if the quality is not good enough, reject the build. So yeah, that's what we do.
In Jenkins, there's a plugin.
Okay. So yeah, you
have lots of
you should get that.
possibility to fail the build.
Yeah.
If you can choose coverage, test coverage,
Yes,
lots of things.
Yeah, and you get the same in Circuit as well. So you can decide which rules to enforce on the sort you've set, and that's what we actually do. If we don't have a certain ratio of new lines of code and a number of new things that pop out, then it's going to be rejected. So yeah, that's what we do.
Yeah.
It is a very good tool. It really helps a lot.
Clearly, Microsoft is doing a great job with the STS.
Yes.
You really see what they have done in 5 years. It's in 3 years. The switch has radically changed in Microsoft.
Yeah.
From the external world. Since the beginning of Azure, in fact.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
I mean, I deal with Microsoft since a long time. I never saw such a massive change.
Yes.
This is really massive change.
It's impressive.
And talking money, I'm seeing people across companies. I'm seeing them in my companies. I'm hearing people from other companies. They're switching from open source, cool, geeky tools to Microsoft solutions. And that's the first time I hear that for developers. That's really the first time. So it really means something. You see, people are happy about what they do.
And for feature toggle, I think it's not that launched darkly on this sort of startup solution offer more tools. I think there is some like only offers this feature to X, Y person in the world on this application. But in our company, we were using some. It's called FF4G. We made some problem with it, and it's more on the back end. And the problem was, okay, each backend has its own FF4G store almost, or it's the same. But how do you create a feature toggle for a whole platform? Because at some point, some services will act together, and you want to deploy the feature for the platform and not for one service. So we encapsulate it with a small REST API. It's very easy to do. And it's the other thing is you can directly call the API from the backend. It's like you offer your own service to toggle the content. So it's the simple solution.
Yeah.
The basic one that most people only use the basic.
Exactly. If you
not everybody use Facebook or
exactly. If you never use feature toggles and you need to start from scratch, you need to build your official toggle archive. It's going to be a waste of time. You already have something that's built.
because for many companies or IT companies, you can't choose.
Yes. Yeah, and also you might not
You
want
don't
to
choose
try out.
you can't even use Amazon. So
Yeah. You might also not want to tie up with a single vendor.
Yes.
Yeah, I agree.
For the questions. Or regarding the business.
Oh, yeah, definitely. This kind of things actually should arise before. Yeah, you should do that before. So what are we talking about right now? It's what the board lines. So the deployment is development, then there is overview, and there is review error, and then it's QA, right? Do you have a testing environment? Or is any out in the testing environment? I like before. Okay. No. So let me get straight before you go. So this problem you're seeing are happening because QA doesn't test on the QA. The unit only buys production. Okay, only everything has been tested before. Yeah, also sorry. Yeah. Oh, okay. I made the easy way. Like you should have other environments because everything has been tested before and also I missed all the part about approvals. You can have pre-deployment and post-deployment approvals. So you can pre-deploy, so okay, start the deployment and you can, for example, say, hey, this deployment you should wait until Monday because the QA team will be free to have it. You can deploy, you wait for the approval. The approval comes just after the QA team validated the approval. So you can't do that. Sorry, I just want the easy demo, but yeah, you can tell all sorts of environments. We're actually using it for production cost. We're very happy with it. AWS are pretty much making a stock of maybe AWS is more inclined towards infrastructure as a service. But actually, the last updates, I should have most hardware powerful machine. 20 terabytes of RAM and another 20 general consumption RAM. No, but they're ramping up on sizes. So they're catching up with the infrastructure of the service. In terms of what makes sense, it's so easy. The clouding is the same on-prem. Yeah, it's very easy to use export approach, but it's very easy anyway. So I tried AWS on personal point. And for some reason, so you can say, okay, this is better. Because CloudFormation and ARM are fast. You're running whatever. SQL Server, Oracle to Document Server. You have so much choice about the size of your infrastructure. You have machine learning. What do you need to
when there's no subscription, you can get up to $150 a month with your credit, which is very valuable because, for example, we use it for the personal testing environments of the developers. So every developer has his own subscription sign up, his own actual subscription. It is easy. Easy. Yeah. Microsoft payments like $10,000 a month, something like that for startups to get into the requirements. And they're going to carry that. I enjoyed it. Which is the interaction between the API and user story and the feature phone. I can see, well, you can see on the feed corners of the user story, you can see percentage of rollout, percentage of environments is involved. It's very it is very fun. I still need to go and find 30 minutes to write the browser on that. It's so fun. And nobody took about that. I like this stuff from personal point of view. We don't use that because we don't have yet much capital. Honestly, it's there are so many things going. Besides the one which is way more complicated than Microsoft is an IT language. So it's kind of limited in terms of real world certain things. But something like that, you can use it. Yep. It is functional, and it is a creative because of the way it's priced. I don't remember the cost, but it is quite expensive. I get a freelance business, so I don't really look at the prices. Yeah, I also do MVT testing because you can have normal percentage per environment. So literally mix and match. It is quite fun. Aside from all the each environment, you don't have to build your own. It takes so much time. A couple of that is also integrated with the direction because I can show the user starts much later in the course. If you need to send to the factory direction, that's why I really like it. Whatever you want, I put everything so only like it's just get the on the service. Once you get that, you can develop variables as you wish. So I use view
Moi, je chômage pour CRA, ça c'est
voilà. Mais alors du coup, il va falloir, en fait, il va falloir discuter de la valeur de ça.
chez toi, t'as le chômage.
Moi, j'avais mis du chômage.
Surpris de mon portable.
Non, mais cette histoire de chômage, en fait, c'est
le CRA, il est automatique, il y a un seul truc qui passe derrière. Ça, c'est quasiment instantané. J'ai des jours partiels. Je suis à 90%. Mais c'est pas grave.
And it's also very about the CDN. So if they go down, there's a CDN. So it will retain the last statement of the digital. If they go down, you're not going down. You're not have all you exactly. It's built with quality lines. It is, I mean, they're hard on the map, so no, they're partners, are part of their work together.